All right, thank you for joining us today. This is Chuck Chernitza, chairman of the CISO Simulation and Wargaming Study Group. And we've got a special session today to talk about some different aspects and maybe talk about the future of AI and wargaming. This was sponsored by our AI and Wargaming Study Group, which is a subset of our overall Simulation and Wargaming Study Group. More about that afterwards. We're always looking for people to join, and we're going to be featuring an upcoming effort to do some writing as a group and maybe produce a report on AI and wargaming. We can cover all that afterwards. But the main feature today is we have a guest speaker. Colonel James Shiflett is going to be our speaker. And I've known Jimmy off and on through ITSEC and other simulation venues, and when I was at VMask and so on for many a year. But I think rather than myself spending time talking about him, if Jimmy doesn't mind, I'm just going to turn over to him, get everything featured on his computer, and let him do a real short intro and let him tell you what he wants to about his background, and then we can get started with the presentation. I want to have as much time as possible for that, so I'm going to stop sharing. Jimmy, if you want, you guys can take over sharing, and then the floor is all yours.
Okay. Chuck, thank you very much. You might want to just go ahead and post that link into the chat if anybody wants to know more about me.
Will do. Yeah, look for a link. It'll be up in the chat in just a minute. And that's got a really nice bio, Jimmy's background and what he did when he was in uniform and serving, what he's doing now for Leidos and so on. I'll get that posted.
Yeah, it's just, I'm the official old guy, I guess. I've been around for a long time. I have a great interest in the application of technology, and basically this is going to be one of the topics. In a previous slide, can y'all hear me okay? Chuck,
yes,
can y'all hear
you fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
pretty fine, yeah.
So I'm a retired colonel. I spent 28 years in the Army. I spent time in troop units in Germany, 3rd Infantry, 3rd Armored in the 70s and 80s. I got involved in simulation, writing requirements for a thing called SimNet. And then I went to be the PM for SimNet at DARPA and helped organize the Defense Modeling and Simulation Office in the early 90s, and was PM CAT and Combined Arms Tactical Trainer in the mid 90s and retired in 97. And have been working as a solution architect in SAIC and Leidos for, 25 years. So I guess that qualifies me as the official old guy. So this is, I am going to go and let me see.
Someone in the room, we've got a hot mic. If you could, everybody mute your mics so we can hear the speaker.
Okay. This is going to be the agenda, and it is the introduction that we talked about. And then, I put a date up here. November. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you fine.
Okay. I put a particular date in here that talks about November 2022, which is a seminal date, because that was the release of ChatGPT. And that was all above. So I'm going to talk a little bit that in the bottom line up front. I'm going to hit about 5 or 6 points, which if you're paying attention, this is the the main things you should take away. I'm going to narrate a video on an IRAD that we did in Leidos on the application of Gen AI and large language model to transform training. And then we're going to do a live demonstration of a particular product focused on wargaming, okay? And then we'll go to questions. And this is what I'm going to work through. All right. So to give you a little context, I like to tell stories because people remember stories. And the way I got introduced to Gen AI and chatbots or large language models, which are kind of an amorphous mass, sometimes interrelated. But I'm not going to sort that out. But my wife and I sponsored a wine tasting where we live. And so part of the deal of wine tasting, you go out and look up information, research it, and you have some things to say about the general nature of wines and even specific. And so that was a very wonderful party on Saturday night. And on Sunday morning, when I get up about 5 o'clock, I'd heard about this Chat GPT. So I decided to go out and test out what it was. And I asked a very simple question. Would you please provide me a short summary of Chardonnay wine? And it took a few seconds. I was using Bing, and if you have an Android or an Apple, you can go on your own cell phone and ask that question. And the results came back was a page and a half of well-written, very articulate summary that was done in about 2 minutes that I'd spent 3 hours the day before researching. And this is probably the major activity because this blew me away from the standpoint of integrating data sets. And it's very different because when I write, you can tell because I don't spell words all right all the time, sometimes don't have the sentences right. Okay, but this was explicitly written. It was written by a master of language. You know, it had a lead in sentence, it had supporting sentences, all the words were spelled properly. They had S's and EDs on them. So somebody could have obviously saw that I didn't do that. All right. So this is going to be one of the things in the power, and we're going to get around to two things, which are going to be talking about syntax and semantics. So if you keep those two concepts as we go forward, that would be good. The second item is that Leidos uh, had been conducting and is conducting extensive research on Gen AI and large language models. And just as there is theoretical physics and applied physics, there is theoretical AI and applied AI. And you need to keep those two concepts together because sometimes people kind of mush them together. But most of the people who do tasks are interested in the applied AI and they expect to use the theoretical AI. So this is just one of about 15 major projects that we've been doing. And the one that I have spent time on is, will this technology transform training? The other one is, from a modeling and simulation standpoint, is the ability to create behaviors in new ways that have been done before in the past to be very time consuming. So I can tell you that since when I was at DARPA, we talked about creation of behaviors from interviewing SMEs, creating combat instruction sets, and then converting those into code. That is a rather long process. Okay, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. The program that we did, that I led, and a guy named Andy Dean and his team, was a thing called Project Socrates. And the question we were given is, will Gen AI transform training? Okay. And there's also, I have encouraged people, and I have conducted a lot of professional development. I would recommend that you go out to YouTube and take a look at them. Okay. They're more that you can see, but if you kind of, peruse through the things, you'll find that you can get an answer to most any particular question. So we set up a blog in basically in February and started getting people to share their experiences in that particular blog. All right. And oh, by the way, if anybody has questions, if you'll put them in the chat or bring them up, I would like this to be to some extent interactive unless we blow through the time. The bottom line up front are, this is in the proverbial, from my Army days in TRADOC, I'm stamping my foot on the stage. These are the points that you should look and understand. The first of all is Gen AI and large language will transform most of the things that we do today. if it is data intensive or information intensive, the nature of your job is going to change in a positive way if you know how to apply the technology. We're in the early stages of this. It's only been a little bit of time, but I can tell you the genie's out of the bottle. Okay, we're from a Maslow's hierarchy of need. We're just at the first stage of outrunning the saber-toothed tiger. We're far away from self-actualization. So you should expect this to change and change rapidly over the next 3 years. It will basically be hard for you to comprehend some of the things that you are going to be able to do. Again, if our kind of metric on a global thing was if you are performing data intensive tasks, you're probably going to be able to save about 40% of the labor. So you can do more with the same number of people if they basically have the skills, or you can reduce cost. The fourth point is a particularly important point. If you ask a large language model a question like Chat GPT or something like that, you should assume the answer is wrong. Okay? Because if these large language models have been trained on the internet, and the internet has got lots of information on it that's just wrong, then if you ask it a question of a large language machine that's been trained on the internet, why would you be surprised if you give the wrong answer? Okay, that's the amazing point to me. What do you not get? Okay, so there is a method of dealing with it, and I'm going to tell you about how you get around that particular problem. The fifth point is that data is king. The Army organizations do a terrible job of enterprise data management. And now you're going to be able to quantify the problems associated with data management in a way that has never been completely understood by most leadership, because we don't do a good job in DOD, Army, Air Force, Navy. I've never seen an organization that does a good job on data management. If you don't believe me, talk to Fareed sometime. Now, the technique that is most important is to get around a large language model that speaks wonderfully, just most eloquently, looks very nice, but it is an airhead. Then you have to way to constrain where you get the answer. And the technique that has come out, and I think is almost universally understood now, is in using a method called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, using domain-specific authoritative data sets. Because, and we're going to show, how do you trust the answer you get from a model? And later on, I'm going to run a live demo of an info assistant and kind of show you a particular method that works very well and how it applies the RAG. And I picked some Wargaming models to books references, and we're going to do a live demo. I hope that they come out like they did yesterday and this morning, but we'll see where it goes. Let me pause here for a second and says, does anybody have any question over the bottom line up front? Somebody's talking, but it's coming in broken. Chuck, did you hear anything? I could not understand if anybody said anything.
I think it was just a hot mic. I haven't heard a question. Plus, also to the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or to turn your mic on when Jimmy asks for questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to go to the next thing. And basically, we did basically AUSA was trying to do a report to the Army on the research. And so the best way to communicate is to show somebody a picture, or better, a video. So I'm going to go, this AUSA Project Socrates video is what I'm going to go through. And you can go to it. It's on the Leidos public facing website. So if you follow that link, and Chuck's going to release these charts, later on, then you can click on that link. You have to kind of scroll down to training solutions subsection, and then you pick the Project Socrates Generative AI video, and it will basically run what I'm running. It's pretty simple to get through. Somebody have a question?
Yes. How do you distinguish between training, education, and learning?
How do you distinguish between training, education, and learning? And the answer is they're all interrelated, okay, but it's access to data. In my opinion, it's more of the packaging and the intended outcome of each one of those activities than it is in other ways. Most of the things the Army does is either knowledge-based or performance-based. So if you can write down a task and you can describe it, whether you're trying to gain knowledge or a particular job performance, then you can basically apply the technology to all three of those domains. I generally offend people when I tell them that the simulation doesn't know how it's used. I always query, is that a training simulation or is this an R&D simulation? And the answer is, how would the simulation ever know that? Because most of these things just represent models and phenomenology at some level of detail and the interactions of those. Generally, in the education domain, you're trying to teach people basic concepts, and you're not really getting down to the specifics of the implementation details. Okay, so there's some interrelationships that are distinct segments in terms of how you present the information and how you test whether the person got it or not, and then to apply it. That's a religious question, and I don't know if I'd ever be able to solve it, but I made an attempt at it. Over. Okay, so I need to go back one, right? Oh, sorry. So I'm now going to go to this. This runs, and I need to be sure that, and this is what you will see if you try to go to get this video.
Drag that across first.
Oh, this is what you come in and see. This is the Leidos AUSA page. We're going to scroll down to where it says training. Training solutions. And here's the item that in there. And Chuck, tell me when I start running this, if you can hear it, okay?
I will do.
Where's that?
Yeah, in the bottom left corner. Play it first. Bottom right.
Okay, we're not getting any of the audio from your video. See, one of your guys is checking it.
We should need to do that. Where's Zoom at? Actually, thank you. Yeah. One moment, thank you. Just gotta bring this back over. And then stop the share and then reshare. That's interesting that it does that,
So I can't talk, I just have to run it, correct?
Yeah. It seemed like you needed to there we go, share it.
Of generative AI large language models
Much better.
to transform training. We're building a custom query capability utilizing curated datasets, including Department of Defense, the United States Army, and United States Air Force doctrinal publications, which are Distribution A, approved for public release, and technical and training documentation, which is Distribution D, or CUI data. Our objective is to construct an expert system to swiftly and precisely retrieve accurate data from a large volume of doctrinal publications and technical and training data. We are incorporating advanced natural language processing techniques, such as retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and machine learning algorithms to create queries based on user input and contextual information gleaned from the curated datasets. Retrieval augmented generation is an AI framework for retrieving facts from an external knowledge base to ground large language models on the most accurate, up-to-date information. Retrieval augmented generation is a relatively new artificial intelligence technique that can improve the quality of generative AI by allowing large language models to tap additional data resources without retraining. Output is intuitively formatted and presented to the user, allowing for convenient evaluation and decision-making. We seek to improve information retrieval timeliness, accuracy, and efficiency for end users to support and enhance their decision-making within dynamic, ever-changing situations, and aid in more efficient and successful job performance while augmenting battlefield capabilities, thus increasing combat readiness and tactical achievement. We started Project Socrates by challenging ourselves to conduct all activities in an objective manner. Our team's perceived notion is, in fact, that AI large language models do transform training and performance support. We've developed a methodical technical and content design, development, and implementation process, and are conducting a robust analytical process to develop recommendations and business rules and fine-tune our large language model for enhanced user experience, prompt engineering, inputs, and outputs. Our goals include being able to use generative AI to design and develop a custom query capability within an embedded help/embedded training, or EH/ET application, to elevate user learning, aid in information retrieval accuracy and efficiency, and produce improved job performance. We know this will ultimately enhance information confidence, accuracy, and efficiency, which again heightens combat readiness to its utmost. Perceived outcomes include being able to use an AI large language model to design, develop, integrate, and test simulation, other digital output, and prototype embedded help/embedded training software with AI-generated and displayed user content. For example, a software user manual developed as an interactive electronic technical manual, or IETM, and the use of an AI large language model to demonstrate a prototype able to swiftly retrieve user-queried or prompted information and results. Project Socrates has been heavily engaged with several other Leidos AI-related IRADs, and we're working with industry technical AI leaders as well as developing our own secure PSDO AI large language model and user environment. Specific activities have included reviewing and analyzing 21 large language models, 17 of which were deemed non-DoD cyber compliant due to interaction with the World Wide Web. This issue further cements our goal to develop a secure, compartmentalized large language model and environment within our PSDO. To that end, we're currently using ChatDocs/Llama 2, and we've loaded it into our Leidos 1838 PSDO environment. Our model does not touch the internet, thus ensuring all data to train the model is controlled and secure. We've ingested over 7,000 pages of public domain doctrinal and controlled CUI data. This is the content from which the model will formulate output or an answer to user prompts or inquiries. Working with leaders at the Maneuver Captain's Career Course at Fort Moore, Georgia, we obtained an additional set of a study guide, final exam with answer key, and references, which we ingested into our large language model. From this data, we developed an additional set of prompts, including questions, answers, and references to assess model behavior and trust. Along with our other doctrinally based prompts, we queried 6 models with the entire Q&A set to determine each model's fidelity and output accuracy, and are continuing to prompt engineer and conduct objective analysis of all output. Within our secure, compartmentalized PSDO large language model, we can index or upload documents and data files into a ChatDocs source documents file for ingesting and training our large language model. We have complete control over what data goes in, what data stays in, and what might get deleted. This is important to ensure the most recent and accurate authoritative source data is always there. Some significant trends already emerging are critical to further design, development, and utility, including significant performance improvement with our GPU-based model versus a CPU-based model. The average response time has taken less than 300 milliseconds. We've indexed over 7,000 pages of public domain doctrinal publications and CUI training and technical documentation within 30 minutes, and ChatDocs is currently optimized for privacy and is DoD cyber compliant. This high-level architectural diagram presents the major components of our large language model within our PSDO. We began with private GPT and have incorporated ChatDocs. You see that we start with data from a trustworthy, authoritative source. This is critical to ensure customization for a user and then the veracity and usability of their prompt outputs. We're able to ingest data into the model and result in a model that is trained with just what we submit or ingest. Remember, this data does not touch the internet, so it does not mix with irrelevant content, nor is it compromised. We're able to ingest data from multiple type formats. This is important in maintaining the integrity of the dataset and ensuring outputs will be user relevant. We recently hosted a workshop with Amazon Web Services in our Orlando office. We accomplished several objectives, including learning how to provision AWS's large language model SageMaker from scratch, identifying and defining the domain subject matter expert, system administrator, and data scientist user types. We used and began to fine-tune Bedrock, AWS's turnkey large language model. We updated our baseline questions or prompts with output grading definitions and Likert score conversions. This is especially important in order to articulate objective results and observations to affect our path forward. And we learned more about how users develop confidence and trust in the model's output or answers, including all tests like this require Q&A with references plus a well-defined grading methodology. Large language models require fine-tuning to improve output or answers and/or follow-up prompts. And we explicitly articulated a previously implied, but very much necessary, requirement for validation, verification, and accreditation, or VVNA, for a large language model domain expert system. Our work on Project Socrates has great potential for us to be able to evolve our secure AI large language model to significantly improve as we continue to fine-tune it and develop input for further prompt engineering. Our current and future planned efforts are critical toward implementing a secure, trusted AI environment which can assure trustworthiness, user acceptance, and model and user performance strength and outcomes, which will be applicable across domains and user job and role categories. In addition to continuing our PSDO large language model work, we're continuing to capitalize on our corporate relationship with Amazon Web Services to specifically test, analyze, tune, and engineer their Bedrock/Titan and SageMaker Llama 2 models within a secure environment. We also plan to conduct the same type of work and analyses as we're doing with AWS with Microsoft to review their Gen AI products with regard to a secure solution. Specifically, we're looking at their industry accelerator, Information Assistant, powered by Azure OpenAI, currently in beta release, with Gamma release, a secure solution being imminent. Here, we have a use case example of how our generative AI large language model and our process associated with it would have translated to the process and product results we successfully executed during the Army's recent AFATIDS modernization program of record. Our point of comparison is the use of instructor-led training versus the use of embedded help and training driven by a generative AI large language model. Specifically, we have metrics on AFATIDS new equipment training and historically accurate hours and instructors required to conduct such events. The Army uses the term critical task to define exactly what tasks must be trained, and all critical tasks must be trained and tested on a frequency of quarterly, semi-annually, or annually based on their complexity and frequency of use. AFATIDS has approximately 130 critical tasks. For the past few years, the net baseline has been 40 hours. Before we delivered the embedded help and training capability with AFATIDS 7.0, the legacy net was 100% instructor-led training, which was conducted by a team of approximately 10 instructors and ranged in time from 40 to 160 hours based on software changes driving changes to the critical tasks. Additionally, through our investigations of generative AI and based on experience, we see a 50% reduction in time an operator or product developer would spend trying to find the requisite content using an embedded large language model. Based on our investigations and testing so far, with the addition of embedded help/embedded training driven by a generative AI large language model, the total net time would decrease from 40 hours to 24 hours, or a 40% reduction in time, and would only require 3 instructors or facilitators versus 10, that is, a 70% reduction. Using an expert domain system, such as embedded help/embedded training, with a generative AI large language model, allows these tasks to be trained efficiently and available to train anytime, anywhere, at the point of need, with significantly reduced resources. Our use of a retrieval-augmented generated AI framework sets the conditions for implementing user-defined authoritative datasets to create domain expert systems. This is extremely important in augmenting people performing their jobs faster and with increased accuracy. Subject matter experts can truly focus on their expert areas to produce work or engage with operational scenarios more effectively and efficiently. This large language model application will reduce your research time by over 50% and allow you to be more productive. For example, this is an extension of reducing research time from going to the library or accessing doctrine and procedural documentation to the internet and now to the large language model. Please contact us for additional information regarding our process, analyses, use cases, and potential additional and future applications.
You're going to want to reshare your screen. They can hear you, Jimmy.
All right. While you're getting your screen back on, let me just first say thanks for sharing that video. It's very informative.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Let me amplify that last one because that was a personal experience. When I was a kid in high school and college, and you had to write a research paper, you got in the car, you drove down to the library, you went and talked to the librarian, she or he told you what it was. You went there with your 3x5 card deck, you did your research, you wrote your footnotes, and you got it all organized. Okay, let's fast forward to 1990s. Oh, we have this internet and Google. And now instead of going to the library, you start Googling items, but you're doing basically the same task, doing basic research and looking things up and organizing it. And now you fast forward to 2023, and I gave you the Chardonnay example. I cut down from 3 hours to less than 5 minutes for the same amount. And the real benefit is saving time because we never have enough time to do things. So now you're going to see from doing what I call sticker, licker, rat counter work, to gathering resources to critical thinking, which is going to basically expand if you know how to apply the tools. Okay, there were a couple of questions.
What is your best practice about checking if the large language model answers are correct or not?
Okay, the methodology we cited is that you should not believe it. So the basic thing is if you want to have statistical inference, you want to get a sample of questions and randomly check to find out if they're right. And there's where you developed a standard set of questions. And then we knew the answers to the questions and the references to the questions. So we could convert, ask all the large language models the same questions and then grade their answers from A to F. And that was the basic methodology. That was rather manual intensive, and we'll probably get into automating those that you can do. But the questions come from the customer and the data comes from the customer. Okay, so what we want to do is constrain the large language model to an authoritative data set. Okay, and I'm going to show you at the next demonstration with the info assistant, how that kind of works. Did I answer that question? Okay, hearing nothing. What's the next question?
I think so. Yeah.
Next question is, so the AI system doesn't touch the game, it's just an expert system for players to query background information?
That's the first step. Remember, I gave a reference to Maslow's hierarchy of need. Yeah, it is quite clear that you can create domain specific, I call them expert systems, that are basically Q&As. Okay, but they are really quick. Okay, and the advantage of that is I never have enough time to read everything I want to read or need to read, but I now have a machine that has infinite memory and can read 100,000 pages of things that I pointed it to. I would never be able to do that. So you never start to unlock the interaction between a large body of curated data and questions and answers, and you'll be amazed at what you can kind of find out. What's the next question?
All right.
No, wait, but this is the first step. You start going to give more and more difficult tasks. Like take a look at this operations overlay and tell me, what does it mean? Being able to see, understand, read, and write Mill Standard 2525D is not far off.
Interesting.
All right. Next question. Can you discuss how large language models have been used in support of the MDMP, specifically with steps 3 and 4?
Okay,
COA
I'll defer
development.
that one. We'll do a live test in a minute. I'm going to ask it for the 7 steps of the NDMP process and then ask for an elaboration on each step. I'll answer that later.
John Hanley asks, how do you react to Clausewitz's statement on positive doctrine? Whenever the commander has to fall back on his innate talent, he will find himself outside the model and in conflict with it. No matter how versatile the code, the situation will always lead to consequences we have already alluded to. Talent and genius operate outside the rules, and theory conflicts with practice.
Yep, I fully agree with that. But let me tell you, when the time I was in the Army, I defined doctrine as what 51% of the Army does, not what it's written down to do. Okay. And you will find that the circumstances are going to change. Okay. The reason they have officers are to think. Okay. But you should need to get prepared to understand things that you can't do. I was unaware until the TRADOC G2 told me that they were trying to train the Army to understand Chinese doctrine. And I said, oh, okay. And I was also surprised to find out that, they publish it on the internet, just like the U.S. Army does. Distribution A. I got a copy of it and I opened it up, and guess what? I couldn't read it because it's written in Chinese. Well, this morning I loaded in that Chinese doctrine into the large language model, and I'll check in a minute and see if it ingests it. And I would love, as a part of a execution or a war game, to be able to ask questions to be sure that people are not just fantasizing about the results, but ask for some opinions from authoritative sources. And it's really hard to get expert on Chinese, or you pick the country that you want. But now you can you have a wonderful assistant who can go out and get all that stuff and tell you a summary. Okay. Pretty soon Microsoft's going to deploy in Teams, I think, the Copilot Teams, so you can have the machine go listen to the meeting, and you says, well, tell me what happened at that meeting, make it 1 page long, and tell me the 3 most important points. Okay. Well, you're going to be able to process a lot more data. Okay. And transfer it into information. Okay. So that's where my first point about, saving time and money. Next question.
Do you see a scope of negative training if we rely on AI?
Well, negative training is not a universally accepted term. Okay. And when my SimNet days, there were lots of people that says, well, SimNet's negative training because you don't have infantry, dismounted infantry. Okay. And the artillery is more effective on tanks and Bradleys than it should be. And the question was, yeah, what's your point? It's not the physical representation, it's the change in behavior that you were focused on. So if you didn't have anything artillery that could do any damage against tanks, since there's no dismounted infantry, what we were trying to train was, what is the appropriate action when you make contact? Well, you make contact, you call for supporting fire. Well, if people didn't do anything with the supporting fire, would they train to call for it? And the problem is you're trying to look at the behavior, not necessarily the physics of it. So understand the intent of what you're trying to train and explain that to soldiers, and I think they'll get it.
John Hanley commented, language follows Zipf's law. Such power laws have a mean but standard distribution, but the standard distribution is infinite. Careful attention is required before assuming that language is subject to Gaussian distributions.
Yep. All right.
And then if you want to comment on that, I don't know.
All right, we're gonna run. I want to show you the demonstration. I'm fixing to change here one more time, and I'm going to say this demonstration is on a curated data set. That curated data set is the NATO Wargaming Handbook, the UK Wargaming Handbook, and then the US Army War College game. And so I'm just going to take you there, and I hope it's going to kind of behave in the similar manner that it did before. So I need to make the change here, and let me know when you can see.
Absolutely. Go ahead and take your time and switch over.
Just drag.
Okay, can you see this information assistant?
Absolutely. Does it have audio? Do you need to switch the audio?
This is live demo, so it'll be audio by Shiflett narration.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
So this is a capability called information system. This happens to be Microsoft. Other companies have similar products, but this is the one I've been playing with for the last 2 weeks. And in here, there are a couple of features. One of the things that I'm doing is being sure that the user and the user interface is good. And this is probably better than most, a lot better than our chat docs. But the first thing you want to do is manage content. And so you can click on the manage content button. You can upload files. I've uploaded some files, and there I'm going to go check on what it is. This was kind of built by, I think, Microsoft, because they didn't want people to build a lot of content, leave it in there. So it kind of goes away at the end of 30 days. And then I hit refresh. And there, what you're going to see, there it is. So here are the documents that we put in there for our curated data set. One of the recommendations that I've talked to Microsoft, and I think they're implementing this, is don't put all the data in one folder. You want to put it into separate folders, or what I refer to as rag piles. In other words, you want user-based authoritative data. And the ones that I loaded recently are basically these three. One of them still kind of hung up, but these are the Wargaming, and this is the, oh, that's interesting. The Chinese document evidently loaded. I did that at about 6:30 this morning, so I had a chance to play with it because our new boss is here and I've been preoccupied. But basically, you can look at the authoritative data that goes with it. So if you want to come here and talk to it, then you can come in, if I hit the button right. And there, let's talk about our problem is spelling. So I'm going to ask it to define wargaming, and there it's going to go and come up with an answer. I think it's going to tell me a short paragraph, and there it is. Wargaming is not defined by a single community. You can read as well as I can read, and you have a couple of references down there. And then I can come by and says, what methods are used? And it's going to come back and kind of write down. And in the charts that you will be provided is I asked some sample questions, and I copied the answers specifically about wargaming. Okay. And in a minute, hopefully we get an answer from this one. I'm sitting, I don't know what time of day it is out where the info assistant is sitting, but it normally is a networking, okay, issue. And now you can see that it is described some different types of methods that have been invoked, okay? If you weren't particularly familiar with any of these things, you may or may not be particularly important. You will also see that these all have annotations on them. And it's going to get to the point is, do you believe the machine, okay? Let me ask another question. Let's see, what is it? What do I working other definitions? Let me ask what methods. Oh, let's ask, can you expand on digital tools? And sometimes it's, I've asked these questions before. Okay, so now you can look at the different types. Oh, still waiting for the digital tools answer. Okay. And the point I wanted to kind of show is that if you have questions about the answers, which is always coming up, here is one of the really important things, that when you check on the footnotes, it's going to bring up another page. And in this case, it's going to, here's the citation. It may take it a second to load in. Okay, there's the content. And it's going to tell you the page, paragraph, and document that you got it on. Okay, and remember, should you believe the answer is no better than the data that you gave it. So if you know what you gave it, but you can't read 100,000 pages, this is very effective, okay? The other thing is, here is the supporting content. So if you want to go read the particular paragraphs, now that you know where in that, great big book to go read, you can go do it. And you can also look at the thought process so that you can look at the trace of how it came up with a particular answer. So this is just a particular method of basically expanding your individual capability to understand all this stuff, okay? Things like doctrine have got many, many dimensions. Wargaming also has many, many dimensions. So I can't read all the stuff that I probably should read, but you can there get it and make it available. So I'm going to show you, since we had the MD-MP question, that's one of the things that was, let me clear the chat. And there, let's come up, let's say, what are
step 3 and 4.
now, what are the steps of the MD-MP process? And first, I'm going to check to find out if it knows the 7 steps. And then we can go look at steps, particularly. Okay, look at there. Got the 7 steps right. And their reference is basically FM 5.0 planning orders. One of the other features is when you start putting this thing in and you have multiple people with their own authoritative data sets, you may find that some people have 10 publications and the other guy's got 15. Well, what happened to the other 5? Oh, and sometimes you have one guy that had an out-of-date manual and they published a new one and nobody told him. So you now have to start the ability to find out what data has been provided for for human decisions. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing. Provide a paragraph. Let's do a sentence on each step. And we'll see. And I'm pretty certain that which ones you're looking for. Step 3 and 4
specific.
Okay. You there see that you've got some Okay. So basically what you have is an assistant, and you can delve down in each one of those. I think in my was interacting with the war game, there was a war game that I was unaware of from the UK manual that talked about a particular war game, Kriegspiel something. And so I asked the question, it says, can you explain that? And it gave me a paragraph. And I says, where do I find that? Additional information. And they said, oh, don't have it. But if you call these people, they're the ones that would have it. So it's very, very good at information systems. Corey Hendricks, who works with me, is in here. And he had a very most interesting question when you're doing wargaming is how can you ensure that you're not drinking your own bathwater? You know, you've come up with courses of actions and you have outputs, but those tend to be sometimes personality based. And, you know, if you're in the Air Force, who gets to the whiteboard first and talks about who won the battle? Okay, but now maybe you could ask a question of an expert and say, what would the Chinese do in this place? Or what would the Russians do in this place? Or a country you have no clue of how they work and how they operate. So this is things that you can get input because wargamings are sometimes, you know, simulation based, and sometimes there are other methods. Corey, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, you know, if you have the large language model, you know, you have, you know, the doctrine, and you also have some situational information that you could add to the large language model through the RAG architecture. You should be able to give the LLM enough context so that when you, you know, put in a combatant persona, if you will, leveraging the personas, then you should be able to start to ask, leverage a large language model, leveraging a persona of a, you know, unit commander. You know, here's what, you know, tell me what you would do in XYZ situation as a way of getting an opposing view of what you're thinking.
What Corey has brought up are some of the attributes you want to be able to control the target audience, the user persona. Am I talking to, you know, a graduate of the War College about doctrine? Or are you talking about, you know, a butter bar that's been in for 3 weeks? So you can define basically the frame of reference or the target audience. You can also define what system are you speaking from as a financial expert, or you a doctoral expert, and then you can see that you can go in here and set some of these things. Learning how to use all these knobs, switches, and dials is going to be part of the art of basically being able to deal with, you know, Gen AI. And the point I want to make, and we're getting close to the end, is the pattern that I've been describing as it applies to wargaming, applies to trading, applies to finance, applies to any particular domain specific authoritative data set. The hard part is going to be getting people to understand, well, what's in your authoritative data? That'll be a religious discussion. Well, let me see what questions I have failed to answer, and I will continue. Chuck, are you still there?
I am. I was on mute, but yeah, well, we're still good and strong. For those who are watching the clock, we're just about at 1 hour at 1 o'clock. But Jimmy, please feel free to go on as long as you're comfortable.
Well, I could talk for 12 days, you know, but I don't think anybody else. So let me look at the rest of the questions.
We may have to order in a pizza and some sodas in that case.
That's right.
True and false. Large language models are great at static knowledge consumption at time t, but for dynamically changing situations has to refrain for each step.
Well, we have answered an RFI and an RFP, which I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on because that I don't want everybody competing against me unnecessarily. But one of the things is having a domain-specific expert system is good so that you can look up stuff. But really what you want is to apply this to operational data. In other words, we got more sensors on the battlefield and more stuff reporting. It's exploding. Orders of magnitude. So I can tell you it's not far from being able to copy or segment operational data, put it in a large language model, deploy it at the point of need, and have it checking on things that you want. The problem is that when I was in the Army, you know, the Spec 4 that was taking all the messages, he had to sleep sometime, okay? And it just wasn't enough people. So the ability to extend an analyst in any dimension, whether the logistics or whether they're operational or intelligence, that's the benefit that's going to be applied to basically fighting wars. So yes, there's a static part, but there's also a dynamic part. Both of them can be addressed by Gen AI.
How does this system address potential for biases in data sets, i.e. U.S. wargaming practices and assumptions that sometimes differ from other nations?
Yeah, well, that's a religious discussion. You going to go to NATO and tell the Dutch that the French are right and the Dutch are wrong? That is not a technical problem. That is a social problem, okay? You will find there will be different methods. I was always fascinated when I was in Germany about how they trained in the field. And they did it differently than the U.S. Army did. I didn't say it was good, bad, or indifferent. It was just different. The Germans, in my opinion, were very good at ensuring that you went through a structured training. We have rules, we have order, we have structure here. You will get to the first exercise, and at 10 after 12, you will move to the second exercise. Well, if you got screwed up, they would just fast forward you and tell you, okay, go to the next one. The U.S. Army was always fascinated by free play, and you had no clue of how long it was going to take. So I didn't say it's not that it's good, better, and different. It's just different, and you have to deal with those differences.
So how we would manage the biases using the RAG architecture that Jimmy had talked about earlier. And so you would limit the responses based upon the documents that you put into that you made accessible to the large language model. And even though those documents might have inherent biases, hopefully they're ones that you would agree with.
Yep. And the other thing that is kind of the thinking is, could you compare the company doctrine of different countries and ask the machine, well, tell me the differences. Okay, if you've never operated with another foreign country or another, thing, you sometimes get surprised when they do things because to them that's just natural. Well, I never knew that. That's all a part about it being involved and embedded with other countries so that you learn from those experiences. So there will continue to be differences, but you have to understand what those differences are and then deal with them.
Any COTS AI wargame solutions?
There are 10 million of them. Okay. I don't know. You could probably go out on, that would be a question that you probably would feel safe at going on Bing or ChatGPT. Says, give me a listing of all the commercial war games. And it would rattle off God knows what, okay? But that's the way I would approach that one.
That's all we have for now.
Did I miss any questions, Chuck?
I don't think so. We've been following through and keeping up in the chat. Last call. We do have one last question here. Are you aware of any COTS AI wargame solutions?
Yeah, that's what I just said. Go ask Bing, and you'll get 100 of them.
Yeah,
or 1,000 of them.
Right, and it's going to come down to how the vendor or software house that wrote the software defines AI. Right. I mean, some people will call a smart player or a semi-automated player an AI, and in one sense it is. So, but yeah, do your research. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, from my DARPA days, we always use the Turing test, and I see that Margaret Loper was on. She's probably been exposed to this. If the actions taken by the machine if the actions taken by a machine were matched to the actions taken by a human in the same conditions, then you would basically call that artificial intelligence. Okay, now that's a very broad definition. So if you can't tell the difference between man simulators and SAV simulators, then you've gotten to the point. And so whether that's AI or not, it depends upon your level of abstraction. Any other questions?
From the chat.
So I hope this has been useful, and you got the information. If you have questions, some of these I get around to answering when it's professional development time on Saturday or Sunday. So if you send me something, I'll try to do the best I can to answer.
Right. Jimmy, thank you so much.
I hope it has been entertaining at least.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Fareed. Margaret said that Fareed posted that Margaret left a few minutes ago. One of the things the study could do is provide some insights. Good suggestion. We have a lot of activities and proposed activities going on inside our study group. And for anybody who's interested, here's a page of information. If you'd like to join the study group and be put on our mail reflector to get announcements of future events, some of the activities that we have going on, our forums, our monthly meetings, our special speakers, all that stuff, feel free to drop me a personal email and I'll point you in the right direction. Or you can go to the CISO website, generate a free account there, and then go under communities and find the Simulation and Wargaming Study Group and join that community. Either way, it's, if you've not been to the website before, it might be just as easy to send me an email and I can help guide you or get you set up. But Jimmy, thank you so much for talking to us today. This is a really hot topic. I mean, everywhere we look, all the different wargaming groups and elsewhere are addressing different aspects of this. It's really great to see what Leidos is doing with their LLM and RAGs, learning tool and all that. I think it's exciting to consider not just wargaming, but the larger C2, C3 world, how this can help. As you mentioned early on, it's a force multiplier on the time it takes in order to do research and generate information and generate quality feedback to a question. So I think it's going to be very, very useful. All right. Anybody else? Last rounds, audibles. Kurt Blaze posts. Also, feel free to get a paid membership in CISO. Sure, that helps the organization go on.
Yeah, sorry, couldn't resist that.
Yeah. Also, while my email is up on the screen, jot down my email address. Send me an email if you want a copy of the slides. We'll be posting them to our forum on CISO. But anybody can get them with requests from me if Jimmy's comfortable with this. And we also have a YouTube channel where we'll be posting a copy of this video.
Okay, I would be very interested in knowing where that YouTube video is.
Jim, once I get the video cleaned up and posted, I'll send you a link, sir.
Okay, and then Fareed will get you the documents, and we can provide them in either PowerPoint or PDF or both. Whatever
fantastic.
you want to do. And for those, when I started thinking about this, I went back to the first meeting I started in August of 1989 to create an organization to do the mission, which is now CISO.
Yes.
And I have lately been collecting some of the early videos and posted them to YouTube, like some of the work on the net, which was the first time that DIS was used out in San Antonio. There's also the Senator Nunn's testimony, the DARPA director's testimony, the House Senate Armed Service Committee, and there are more of them. So if you're interested, you can find those also.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, that's it for me. I was going to leave.
All right, I'm gonna pull the plug in a minute. Everybody good? All right, thank you, folks. I appreciate it, and we'll watch for announcements for future talks. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.